Well, thank you so much for taking some time this morning and welcome to my home.
Sure. Where are you calling from?
We're actually right outside of Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. And
Sure.
I saw that you're a Penn State grad, which we actually I went to Bloomsburg. I met my wife in Bloomsburg.
Okay. Sure. I know Bloomsburg. Sure.
So
Sure.
right down 80. But thank you so much for
Oh, no problem. And I'm recording it, so sure.
okay, perfect. I've been a huge fan of your family and kind of what you guys been doing for a while. So it's a real pleasure to chat with you. And I started reading your book last night as
Oh,
well.
cool.
So
Thank you. You're the one.
what's that?
You're the one.
It's great so far. I'm actually really excited to get into it a little further as well. And congrats on the recent anniversary as well.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That's
Appreciate
a
that.
big
How you
achievement.
handling quarantine?
Um, it's been crazy. It's we've been staying home. We have a 2-month-old son.
Oh,
So
congrats. Okay.
thank you. So we're staying very, very close. Besides just going for a walk, there's really
Okay.
nothing that we're doing all like the delivery groceries,
Sure.
and then wiping everything down, of course,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
when you
We're
walk into the
pretty
house.
anal about that.
It's crazy times. I mean, have you ever seen anything in your life that's remotely anything like this?
Well, I mean, no, other than 9/11, no.
Right. And that's
Uh,
and I was one of the
that was a singular event. This thing just drags on. I mean, both are terrible, but no, really nothing like this.
and who really knows how long it's gonna last.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it is. All you can do is just take it one day at a time.
Absolutely. And that's something I was gonna ask you as well. I know you mentioned in your book, kind of with your whole sobriety journey,
Uh-huh.
you take it one day at a time. Is there any kind of parallels that you've been able to pull from your experience and your
Sure,
journey and use it now?
sure. Uh, in recovery, it's for me, and I think a lot of people would agree that one of the worst things somebody can do, potentially in early recovery, is start projecting out what things are going to look like 6 months or a year from then, versus just working on being in the moment and working on that day, that
Right.
moment. And because you can get very anxious and get off center by trying to the uncertainty of will I make it to a year? Will I make it to 6 months? And I don't think I can possibly make it that long. So there are parallels. I don't think I can sit in my house another month, right? And you get all anxious, and that is certainly would be a parallel, sure.
Interesting. So you're taking this. So you're not even in life, and with the whole coronavirus, you literally take it. What am I going to do today?
Well,
What's
that's
going
what
to
I try to do. I'm human like anyone else, and
right?
get anxious. And I mean, I make my life as a public speaker, and as you might imagine, that is zero now.
Right.
So I have employment anxiety like anyone else, and uncertainty.
So has that caused you to adapt and kind of change your current business model, or have you?
I don't know. I don't know how it's going to change. Am I preparing to adapt? Yes, but I have no idea how things are going to look come fall. I still have events that are scheduled for the fall that are still on the schedule. So I don't
Right.
know if they'll switch to doing them by Zoom, a Zoominar.
Right.
And, I don't know how it'll look. So, but I am preparing to be able to adapt depending on which way it goes.
I mean, and we're very fortunate to have this type of technology. I tell my family members, and I tell even grandparents and stuff who were able to FaceTime and see the baby. Like I said, he's
Sure.
2 months old. So it's sad for us and sad for them to miss a lot of these times because
You don't get them back. I get it, and especially when you get my age, you reflect on that a lot more. But that time is gone.
yeah,
But not like I was
yeah.
doing
So I
anything a
mean,
whole lot different before this. I work from home, but
right.
it's different that when you have to versus when you choose to.
Right. And we changed as a company for my company. We weren't technically a remote company. Like I have a laptop and I have the ability to work remote,
Hmm.
but that was kind of even working for a technology company. We had some crazy lifts and what we had to change our models and stuff too. Fortunately, as you know, for my work, I'm in IT sales, so I'm fortunate to have job security right now,
Sure.
because we're on the front lines of, hey, we're working with hospitals. I'm working with some vaccine companies right now who
Okay,
are
so yeah,
growing.
you're privileged to be in a situation where your job's not at stake.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I try to look at it as, we're super, super fortunate, even given the circumstance. I wanted to get back to some of the social anxieties that I think are going to happen post. I mean, not only during COVID-19 with the mental health side of things with people being home, but also post, because there's going to be huge issues with, is it safe to go outside?
Sure.
Could I go to a restaurant? Could I get food delivered? Um,
Absolutely.
what what does your daily ritual look like to kind of prepare for that
To
in
prepare for
how.
life after, I don't know that I have one to prepare for life after, because I don't know what life after looks like yet. uh, I mean, I think the anxieties will come, especially, for instance, here in Texas, the governor's talk. There's a lot of talk, and we don't know what it will look like. And I think everyone's anxious about starting to reopen businesses. Well, what does that mean for me? I don't want to go. I mean, I'm 59 years old. I don't want to. I'm anxious, certainly anxious about reintegrating and catching it. And
Absolutely.
so, I mean, if you're asking me about where I feel safer right now, I feel safer in quarantine.
Right.
And but I don't know what he's going to say. So see, I'm already projecting out the worst. I don't, and when the
Right.
governor hasn't even made a statement yet about what he's going to do. And I think there's a lot of anxiety there, and I think that's common. And from a recovery standpoint, I think that's what we all need. People in recovery need to be careful about that, because anxiety has a strong correlation to relapse.
Right.
So you have to be careful about that.
Do you expect this situation to cause more people to relapse who are in recovery?
Sure. I mean, I think the data from that won't come for quite
For
a
a
while
long
down the
time.
road, but anecdotally, I see it. Sure. And
Right.
I think everyone expects it. I think from a common sense standpoint, you expect it. And so, yes, I just don't know what the data will show, but anecdotally and instinctively, I think that's certainly going on right now.
Absolutely. And I guess probably one of the big things, even besides COVID-19, probably staying busy probably helped you along the
Staying
journey.
busy, boredom can lead to a lot of destructive thinking, and not, I mean, not so much. I'm not personally worried about it. I'm pretty comfortable in my recovery. I have things I do, but I think for people who are struggling, who sitting at home alone is a trigger in itself to drinking or other types of substance use.
Right.
It could be a big problem, especially now when you don't have the physical connection. A lot of the different 12-step groups and such, AA and all that, they've gone online. A lot of groups have gone online, but for some people that may not be enough.
Right.
So there is certainly that concern.
Absolutely. And what do you do right now to stay busy? Do you have any kind of meditation routines, or do you?
I'm working on a novel. So I was just writing this morning and doing some research, and so I'm doing that, and I'm just about finished with my first draft. I'm working on new content uh, that I shot before the lockdown. I shot my keynote in green screen.
Okay.
So I'm working on different ways that I'm going to present that content and thinking about that. And those are my two main things. And then we're fortunate to have a Peloton in here. I get my exercise in.
Very nice.
Yeah. I mean, and my wife has started her new business. She's a legal recruiter. So we both have stuff to do. But of course, she's much more disciplined than I am at it. She creates a schedule and boom, 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 boom. And the problem when you don't have a schedule for the day, and I recommend that everyone do it. I don't practice what I preach enough. But the problem is then the effort expands to fit the day, right? If it's unfocused.
Right.
And you end up watching CNN all day and refreshing the John Hopkins COVID website obsessively to look at the stats.
Yeah, that's scary in itself.
Which is why there should be shutdown time from the television and
Right.
from the news and from social media, just to which when I'm on the bike is a good shutdown time for me. But
So have you always seen exercise as a good out in general or a good way to clear your mind? I
Well,
love.
sure, I'm a runner. I mean, I'm a runner. I used to be a runner. I've had my hip replaced, so not so much anymore. But right now, it's really the one thing that I really need because
Right.
otherwise, your mind wanders, and it's kind of an antidepressant for me. The
Yeah.
endorphins,
For everybody. I
yeah,
mean,
and I sleep better. And I sleep better. So, so I
it's
feel fortunate that we have the Peloton.
and it's one of those things that I mean, I've been doing more like insanity workouts and stuff, kind of going more old school of what we're doing. But even as we were mentioning the other day, even to walk outside, all right, I need to put a mask on just to be safe. I need to make sure that I stay away. But it's for me, I can't even really focus on relaxing because I'm so worried about seeing somebody and, oh, does that person have it?
Yeah, you have to.
Worried.
You see them 50 yards ahead, and you're already planning your loop around them.
Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
There's,
It's
there's
really
certainly a stress to that in itself. But my wife walks, and she does the bike, and so we each have our own routines. And I think right now routine is important. Routine is
absolutely
important. It's a healthy routine, obviously. If your routine is doing a line of blow every morning, that's not a healthy routine.
right. So you mentioned that writing a book as well. I have some aspirations of doing that at some point in my life as well. Do you just take previous experience? I know with the Addicted Lawyer, you just took your previous experience, and that was probably an easier one. I don't want to say an easy
Yeah,
one.
no, nonfiction for me is memoir is certainly easier because I know my own story.
Right.
Yes, than fiction. Sure, this has taken me going on 2 years now because I didn't know how to write fiction.
Right.
And so I don't know that I still know how to write fiction, but I have a mentor who lives out on the West Coast, who's a very well-known novelist out there. And we Skype every Tuesday, and she helps me. But I mean, it is what it is. I've written it and just about done. I had to stop because there's a location the book takes place at where I've never been, and I'm trying to research it. And if we weren't quarantined, I could get on a plane and go out there.
You'd go there, right?
Yeah, and I can't. So I have to figure it out the best I can.
Absolutely. So do you like, it sounds like writing fiction was out of your comfort zone. Do you like stepping
Absolutely
out?
out of my comfort zone.
And what did you learn? What was a big piece of something that you learned from stepping out?
That the only solution to learning fiction is to read and write fiction.
Interesting.
My ego really and my got chopped down because The Addicted Lawyer has done pretty well. So my ego really got chopped off at the knees when I started writing fiction and realized I didn't know the first thing about it. And it was like walking into a courtroom for the first time. And so I had to stop and actually spend time learning the art of fiction and begin to read. I was never a reader, fiction reader. And so I began to read, now audiobook actually,
Right.
listen to everything I can. And I haven't been so much recently because I'm on the cusp of finishing this manuscript.
Right.
And I don't want to just be distracted. But yeah, I started reading. I mean, I've read in the last year, I've just one fiction book after another, and not the same genre either. I've read literary, I've read contemporary, I've read female fiction, I've read crime fiction, and so just to bad fiction, good fiction, just to get a sense for what I like and what I don't like.
And is that the only way? Because I love nonfiction. I don't know if that's just because more of like the self-development. I don't know if that's just because I'm 25 and I'm really trying to grow my career at this
Yeah,
point.
that's all I ever read was nonfiction before.
And what have you found to be some of your favorite fiction books, or what could I do as well to start say, hey, maybe I want to look into fiction as well. Why should I?
Just start reading it. That you just decide what kind you like. I mean, I happen to like. I've been reading. What's his name? He wrote The Cartel. There's a guy. It's early. I can't think of his name. He has a whole series of books. He wrote The Force, The Cartel. Some really good books. Don Winslow, and so I like that. I've read.
Okay.
The last Stephen King book I read was 1960 about the Kennedy assassination. The guy travels back in time to stop the Kennedy assassination, and so I just read. And then I've read. I've gone and I've read The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I've read just different things that are. I try to cover as many different genres as possible. I'm reading one right now that's really geared towards women. It's a female really a female theme to it. But it's written in the first person present,
Okay.
which is what my book is in. And so that's unusual. So I'm reading it just to see how she does first person present.
So
But
you're
it's not
taking
a
a,
book a guy would normally read. It's a female contemporary fiction.
and have you learned a lot from kind of expanding your horizons on different things that you may not have really been interested in before? Has that helped
Sure,
your book?
you have to learn what works and what doesn't work in terms of finding out what your voice is. Uh, Otherwise, if you don't read other voices, how will you know?
Right.
I mean, it's anyone can get lucky, but I came to and just write your first novel, but I came to learn that with that, if I hadn't started reading extensively other people's works, I wouldn't be nearly where I am now.
So reading is one of the best ways to be a writer. What other things would
You
I?
know, go ahead and you should read Stephen King on writing. Read Stephen King on writing.
I'm gonna take a note of
And
that.
it's not a nuts and bolts on how to write. It's his writing philosophy. And
Interesting.
it's a very good book.
Okay. I'm just taking a note of that
Yeah,
right now.
read Stephen King on writing. That would be, I think that's everyone's kind of first foray into when someone says, who can I read on how to write? And it's really not on how to write.
Right.
It's on his writing philosophy.
Interesting.
They're on, if you're looking, when you're ever ready, if you're looking for books on the nitty gritty nuts and bolts of writing, there are much more boring books. They're nonfiction books,
Okay.
but there are books, and a guy named Saul something. But there are books, and they're mostly written by editors.
Okay. So
They're
they're
not
good
written by
people.
novelists. The nuts and bolts books on writing, on how to write, boom, 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 and on what first person present means, what third person means, what different points of view mean. Those are generally written by editors.
Okay. Well, I'm going to read Stephen King on writing, and then
That would be the first one I'd recommend. It's good. And the one thing Stephen King said, writing your first book should take about, if you write every day, schedule, it should take about 3 to 4 months.
Okay. Very good. So I'm going to learn that, and I'm going to report back to you on my findings, and I'm also then going to ask Brian Cuban what his philosophy on writing is once I get Stephen King's.
Absolutely, read Stephen King. It's a good one.
Okay. I want to get back to, I know your story has a ton of resiliency and failure. I'm a pretty big believer in failure and how it propels you to some of your best moments in life, and truly sometimes try to seek it out, as crazy as that is.
Okay.
What's your view, and what have you learned from failure?
Well, I've learned that the term failure is a social construct. Okay. Things don't always work out the way we want it, right?
Right.
And so does that mean you failed, or does that mean you learned? So you might ask Mark what failure means, my brother, and he might say something different. But I view failure as an entirely social construct created term. If this didn't go the way I wanted, did I fail? Right? The business collapsed. Did I fail? Well, it's just a word.
Interesting. I'd love to know what you don't know what his definition of failure is, or
you can Google it for sure. I mean, the way he talks about it, I mean, he says he's had businesses that fail. So there's his definition, the business didn't make it.
Right. How did he react? What did he do to try to?
So the business failed, the business didn't survive.
Right.
But from a recovery standpoint, that's not necessarily the best way to look at it. If I relapse, I don't, if you view relapse as a failure, then you're going to start beating yourself up. You view relapse as a resilience tool. Nobody wants to relapse, right?
Right.
But if you view it as a failure, you're going to start beating yourself up. If you view it as a tool of resilience and what you learn from it, then it's an opportunity.
Oh, so that's a simple way of switching that failure into a positive there.
Well, you would hope failure always breeds resilience.
Always brings something good.
We learned failure. The term failure and recovery can be very stigmatizing and shaming. I failed. What's the point?
Very negative connotation.
Very negative. Well, in business, there are benchmarks, right? You declared bankruptcy. You're no longer in business. Okay, you failed. Why did you? But from the recovery standpoint, that is not productive to look at it that way.
Interesting. Interesting. And I know you mentioned Mark. I know you're working with him on the Fallen Patriot Fund, which is incredible. I read up on that, and thank you so much for everything you're doing there. Besides that, do you ever pitch any other business ideas to Mark, or kind of try to
No,
work with that?
he does his thing and I do mine. But I
Interesting.
mean, we're brothers and we love each other and we support each other. And he supports all of my mental health work. But I mean, I'm not an entrepreneur in his sense. I've never been. We're not motivated by the same things in
Interesting.
life. We're different. I mean, we're different people. Just like you're a different person from your wife, or you're a different
Right.
person from if you have siblings, right? You're just different people. And
Absolutely.
I don't look. I mean, I look at it from a family standpoint, not from someone outside looking in. You know,
Right.
get that guy, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Do you go to him? I saw in your book too that you go to him for advice. Do you go pretty often to him on different life or business advice, or is that
Uh, no, we interact enough that it comes. And I mean, and his opinions are all out there, so it's usually if I go to him, it's a personal issue.
okay? Very good.
Yeah, so I'm not. Yeah, I mean, he's just my brother to me. It's
Right. Absolutely. Um, I wanted to get speaking of family as well. I'm a young dad, and I want to try to give my son the best advice that I can growing up. What's the best advice that you learned from your father?
uh, one, take care of always family comes first,
Okay.
and two, be who you are. Have your own identity. Don't try to be someone else.
Very good. That's great advice. You know, it's something that I try to get good advice every single day, and
Yeah.
I seek
Well,
opinions
it's
from
something
others as
I've had
well.
to learn, right? Because you can't compete with when you start trying to compete with something that's 99.99% of the population can't compete with in terms of success at a certain level and this and that. Then you're gonna not have you're going to be living someone else's life.
So you need to just look more towards yourself
Look inside
besides family.
yourself and figure out what your passions are versus trying to live someone else's passions.
And how did you find what your passions were growing up?
Took me 50 years through a lot of struggle to create my own identity and live my life.
So you think so there besides just fighting the struggle and looking at all of those things as you move through, that's probably the best way to get through something like that?
I mean, I mean, I was in a situation where I have an older brother and who's mega successful and this and that, and so there are dynamics to that. It's not his fault; those are my fault for not having my own identity, sense of self. And so I've learned to not try to be anyone else. Just be you.
Right.
Just
Right. But and you're so successful in your own right though. So that's super commendable as well.
oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. But it took me a long time to get here, to get to a place where I feel comfortable in my own skin. And that would be comfortable, learn, figure out what your passions are and what you want to be comfortable in your own skin.
Thank you. That is some great advice. I want to dive a little bit further into some other career advice. So, just as a background on myself, I mentioned, I've been working in IT sales for 2 years now and doing fairly well. Pretty much always over 175 to 200% of my quotas. So the sales are going very well.
Good.
Besides that, I've been doing. I'm the co-host of my company's podcast as well. So it's been really fun to interview people, to kind of get more content out there. I know you're big with LinkedIn and kind of generating content and kind of building brand that way as well. Um, but like you said, I want to get my family in the best financial position that I can and really know what I want to do. There's different ways of I could stay in sales. I could uh, take a different management role. I could go more towards the content creation. How do you know where to focus your attention on things?
For me, I mean, it's for me, because it's what's in front of me. It's again, it's I know that I have to the environment to an extent dictates where I focus my attention. If I feel I'm struggling for some reason, I focus my attention on my recovery. The pandemic, I have to focus my attention on being adaptable to whatever my profession looks like coming out of this, the speaking profession. I have a book that's almost done. So, I mean, I focus my attention by looking what I have in the day pretty much versus planning down the road. But you have to remember, how old are you?
I'm 25.
You're 25 and I'm 59. Okay. So it's going to be probably going to be a different outlook in terms of life goals, right?
Yep.
So that's it's much easier for me to say this is what I need to do today.
So to distill it down is, it seems like things come back from not only recovery, but for the focus side of things, literally just focus on what you have to do in that day, try to get a schedule and really just hyper focus on what needs to be done right now and not try to look too far.
Sure. I mean, 3 months ago, my focus was where's my next speaking event going to be? I speak at law firms and such, and that has changed because that's not happening. So
Right.
now I have a different focus.
Interesting. So you have to be fluid as well, and don't get too.
You have to be adaptable. You have to be adaptable, and that's what I'm working on. And it's there's certainly uncertainty for everyone, and how can you adapt to what you don't know is coming?
Right.
So it's but you can adapt to the commonalities, right? I know that no one in my profession is working right now.
Right.
And everyone's trying to figure out a way to deliver content online. So what does that mean to me? My content has to be more compelling than their content, because people may start consuming that digital content, those videos and such, in a different way now, right?
Right.
Maybe not going to bring me into the room of 300 people. So I know that my content just needs to be more compelling because they're going to choose.
Interesting. And what, as a public speaker and now kind of pivoting into the content world, what's the best way to keep an audience, or what is the best way to really, capture people?
Be compelling. Have a good story. Storytelling. Have a good story. Wrap everything around a good story. Storytelling is the scientifically proven to be the most effective way of driving business, of driving brand.
Interesting. Do you follow, or have read any good books on storytelling, on how to try to get?
I'd have to get you. I've read tons of books on storytelling, but what I found too in reading everyone else's storytelling books is I don't want to be the way I don't want to tell stories like they tell stories. I want to tell stories like I tell stories.
So putting Brian's flavor into it.
Well, my voice.
Right.
I have a way of looking at the world that isn't there with someone else's way. It's not Gary Vee's way of looking at the world when he tells the story.
Right.
He's a great storyteller, but I'm not him, and I don't want to be him. I have my storytelling skill set is much different than him or Mark's.
Right. Interesting. What other career advice, you mentioned you're 59 and I'm 25. What career or even life advice did you wish that you knew at that point, or if you could go back, wish you knew you had?
Go back to when?
To 25.
25? Oh, I had just, what was I doing at 25? I just graduated law school. So it was my first year in Dallas. I was unfocused. Have a plan. But again, having a plan, if you can put together a plan within the pandemic, and you can put together a plan, just the general plan, assuming everything is
normal conditions,
whatever normal looks like. So I have a plan. I have a career plan. I wish I had none. I was just living day to day for a number of reasons.
And then to look into a plan, how do you take, how do I know what a good plan is? Do you take what you're passionate about and just double down on that?
I think you learn that by reevaluating. You have back in the day we used to called when we were, I don't know if they still review performance like this, performance by objectives, and but they probably don't. That was Buzz thing way back in the day.
Okay.
But your plan is by objectives, and are you hitting them? If why not? And you set benchmarks where you reevaluate and retool.
So a lot of self-evaluation and self-assessment,
Sure.
kind of looking in again.
Sure, but you set specific benchmarks to do that.
Okay. And I know that every day I have I write almost every single night, kind of reflecting on what I did during the day. Do you think it's a good idea to go back on that and see where things could have been up and down and
Absolutely. I
then
think
go back?
journaling is a great idea. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because there's nothing like seeing how you felt in real time.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, that is great advice. A couple final quick questions. I know we're rolling right up here, right
Sure.
on time. Um, what other daily routines do you have? Is there any things besides working out, writing?
Right now, no, because what are you going to, I mean, everything, your world is this big right now,
Right.
right? So, no, I mean, this is it. And I'm sure it will change as we roll out of this. But right now, my daily routine is what will get my book done, what will get my content done. And for me, that's fine. For me, that's fine. For me, when I went into recovery back in 2007, a big part of recovery was also shrinking my world to a microscopic thought. So I
Okay.
didn't have a lot of outside factors, whether it was old people I used to hang out with who did blow and drank and this and that. So I shrunk my world down to a very small square, and so I understand what it's like to have to shrink your world and function within that shrinkage.
Right.
So right now, from that standpoint, this is not all that different for me from that. But again, the difference is being forced to versus choosing to.
Interesting. Interesting. And I know therapy played a big part in your life, and I think
Sure.
still does.
Sure.
For someone who's, I think my life is just going, as is right now, going very well. What would be the benefit of doing some type of therapy, given I want to say normal situation? But
I mean, take a look at where write out what's going on in your life. Take a look at what your life looks like on a daily basis. I mean, I think everyone needs someone to talk to. Do you have the people around you? Do you have the connections that you can talk to? And if you don't, why not? When you're struggling with something, and if you need if you decide you need an outlet, I think a therapist is always a good idea. And I don't think anyone should be ashamed of doing that.
And I was going to ask about the stigma. It seems like there's a negative stigma around therapy. Why do you think that is, and how do we break
Because
that?
society has deemed it weak. But that's certainly changed than back in my day when I first started therapy. But because society deems that weak, but it's not. It's courageous, and it's a strength to understand and allow yourself to be vulnerable and seek help.
And I think it's incredible that folks like yourself and other big names are out there advocating and making it look like a strength and not a negative. So
Yeah, no,
I
it
think
is.
that's
It is. I mean, the self-awareness to know that having the self-awareness to be able to step back and look outside in at yourself and say, okay, maybe this isn't functioning the way I want it to function. That's a strength, not a weakness.
right. So taking that negative into a positive again.
It's not. I mean, it's never. It's only a negative because other people may view it that way. It's never been in true form. It's not a negative.
Right. Interesting. What motivates you?
What motivates me? To try to do the next right thing and try to help someone every day. But knowing that something I write, say, or video could cause one person to go into recovery. That's what motivates me, to help one person every day. And I
And I
may
got
never know that if I've helped that person, to be a
and
touch point in someone's recovery.
I saw that was one of the first lines of your book. If this touches one person,
Yeah.
this
And
will
I
be
may never know if it does. But I know anecdotally that it has, because I get emails and this and that.
right.
But I go and speak in a room of 10 people or 100 people. If one person gets something from my story, then that is the day's been a victory.
Well, you talking to me this morning has definitely given something to me. So you did your good deed for the day, Brian. You could go lay around, go do whatever you want.
Anytime, Tyler. I hope you and your family stay safe and healthy in this time. And feel free to reach out anytime. And I'll send you the recording.
Awesome, Brian. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and stay safe.
You too. Have a good Saturday. Bye-bye.